Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Grabo, and today we will be watching Can I Survive Infinite Goblins in Gnomoria by Reggie. I think it's gonna be an RTS, I'm not sure. Let's find out.
A hypothetical situation.
Hey Reggie.
You're walking down the street when you discover a priceless artifact. It's so valuable that it attracts thousands of visitors and also thousands of thieves. How do you plan on defending your divine relic from the hordes of attackers? Will you set up an elaborate series of booby traps, perhaps construct an army of automaton serial killers, or even take matters into your own hands with a giant musket?
Blunderbusses.
That is the question we will answer in today's video, as we'll be playing Gnomoria, but
What was that? What was that? Was that a dwarf with a huge cake? Hang on. Looking. No, I can't find it.
With a giant musket. That is the question we will answer in today's video, as we'll be playing.
Oh. You can't show it. You can't show that on YouTube. Wait, that's on the Steam page. What the hell?
Playing Gnomoria, but we start the game with a ring worth $4 million, which attracts a lot of unwanted attention. But first, what is Gnomoria? Gnomoria is the dollar store love child of Dwarf Fortress and RimWorld, developed by a man who is loved by his community. And personally, it might be my favorite. Not because it's good, but because much like an abusive relationship, I got used to it. Growing up, some people could afford 100% fresh organic orange juice, but the rest of us had to settle for artificially colored liquid microplastic at half the price. I'm not complaining. In fact, I'm thirsty for more, because this game hasn't received an update in 10 years, and for the low price of $5,000, you can even buy the domain. Now, the first battle we have to fight in this video is against the game itself. The video settings tab creates an illusion of choice, but trust me, this shit ain't going any higher than 1080p. And if you try to use the custom resolution to adjust it, you will be disappointed. Once you've capitulated to the 1080p fundamentalists, we can begin the game, at which point the challenge of this video becomes clear. We start with 8 gnomes, a handful of random supplies, and a ring worth $4 million.
Guys, let's be honest, this is a poor attempt at a Dwarf Fortress clone, but I am curious to see what features it has in an attempt to distinguish itself from its betters.
That alone is 40 times the net worth of an entire late-game kingdom, which is a problem because the game scales enemy raids based on how valuable your kingdom is, meaning that within a few days, we're going to have somewhere between 50 and 100 fully armored goblins and ogres showing up to kill everyone here, and it's up to us to figure out how to survive. My goal is to hold out for 5 years, but we'll be lucky if we can get 5 days, so let's get to work. Going into a challenge like this, the optimal playstyle isn't immediately obvious, so I try to
harvest every single thing on the map and spend the next like 50 days with your dwarves paralyzed harvesting plants on the surface.
Few different survival strategies. Attempt number 1. Our ring attracts dozens of goblins, but it also attracts dozens of gnomes. So I focused on crafting as many weapons as possible and creating an improvised army to fight off the goblin raid. This was a disaster. I knew it would be bad, but I had no idea just how bad things could get.
That's a lot of dead dwarves.
Within seconds of the armies clashing, our kill feed lit up with every person I had ever known. Punctured lungs, crushed bones, mutilated eyes. Our gnomes never stood a chance. Sometimes the goblins would even pick up our severed limbs and beat us to death with them. Needless to say, we lost, and we're clearly going to need a more creative strategy if we want to survive.
If you're a RimWorld player, this visual triggers your synapses. You immediately recognize what this is.
Attempt 2. I tried forcing the goblins to path through an underground dungeon, hopefully being killed by the monsters inside.
Did it work?
Kind of worked, but it also started a zombie outbreak in my colony and everyone died. Next attempt was a flood tunnel. Force the goblins into it, then drain the entire volume of a lake on top of them. This did drown several goblins, but the ogres survived and beat us mercilessly. No good. However, it did give me an idea. At the very bottom of the map, under 100 layers of dirt and rock is tons of molten lava.
Yes.
This same design executed with lava might be what we need to avoid a painful death. So let's give it a try. Start generating
He's gonna
a new
fuck it up,
world.
isn't he?
Give it a terrible name so no one wants to go there, and then get to work. Quickly surveying the map,
Ain't
I
gonna
decided
work,
to settle
Chief.
in this corner for its defensive features and access to clean drinking water. The gnomes get to work clearing the forest, establishing some farms, and building a communal sleeping area. I even went ahead and gave them a few piles of grass to sleep on. I want to be
How
clear,
nice.
I'm not doing this because I care about the quality of their life. I'm doing it because I can extract a higher quotient of backbreaking labor out of them if they're well rested. Speaking of backbreaking labor, right now it's spring day 1. By summer day 3, the goblins arrive, meaning we have about 15 days to dig to the center of the earth.
That's
and
not
back.
a lot, Chief.
So I'm going to be running these miners around the clock. In fact, I might just lock them underground. No breaks, no family visits, just mining and whatever food I can push under the crack of a
Bro's
locked
gonna
door.
die in a coal
On to
explosion.
the next issue, monsters. They typically spawn in unlit tunnels such as these, and if we don't start crafting
Wait, it has Minecraft spawning mechanics? Come on, dude. Even Dwarf Fortress doesn't have lighting mechanics. Come on, man.
torches soon, starving to death in a mine shaft will be the least of our concerns, so I went ahead and set up a crude workbench to start production. However, in our quest for proper lighting, our main enemy isn't death by zombie outbreak. It's actually death by self-inflicted gunshot wound.
What do you mean?
Because the crude workbench makes me unreasonably angry. Never before has man nor gnome created such a hellish instrument of suffering. It's
Oh my
so
God.
inefficient that I've personally witnessed a gnome spend 2 days and nights in the crafting of a single plank of wood. And over the next few days, we're going to need hundreds. After several hours of swearing at my computer screen, I managed to white-knuckle our way into some more efficient workshops, and we began lighting the mine shafts as well as building a kitchen to process our food supplies. Gnomoria boasts a diverse selection of meals to keep our gnomes
they
happy
need
and
booze?
healthy. However, I fundamentally reject the 24-step process involved in baking a cake. So instead, most of our gnomes will live and die without ever knowing anything other than the flavor of stagnant pond water and poorly crafted fruit salad. This is the path to utopia. With the end of spring quickly approaching, our tunnels are about 90% of the way done. We just need to go a bit deeper, connect them, and then put up some
But
walls.
Reggie, you still have to make the entire channel and all the mechanisms, but I don't know how this game handles fluid mechanics. You have to still make all that shit. Are you even gonna make it? I doubt he's gonna make it. And even then, I doubt it's gonna work and he's gonna like fuck it up and kill all his gnomes.
Such that the only entrance to our base will be through a 70,000 step staircase that passes through the center of the earth.
Yeah, that's
Summer is
tradition.
upon us, and with that, a new wave of 55 gnome immigrants. This
Why are they all
increases our
hungry?
population by a factor of 8, which means we've got about 2 days until everyone here is
but he
starving
has
to
more
death.
hands
This is
now.
remedied quite simply. Select the forage tool and highlight the entire map. Then sit
Yeah,
back
that's
and
what I
watch
said.
as
He did it.
55 gnomes scour the surface of the earth like a swarm of locusts, rapidly consuming every apple, dead body, and blade of grass in their path. I can only imagine the mental flashbang of being a tourist in our colony. Hey,
my
welcome
eyes.
to the world-famous Colony of the Ring. Shut the fuck up and start eating these bugs. Once that's done, follow me through the lava tunnels and try not to breathe. The ambient temperature will scorch your insides and kill you, in which case we will be processing your body into sausages. Oh, and in case you're wondering where the
kielbasa.
bathroom is, it's all around you. Enjoy your stay. Summer Day 4. The goblins will be upon us any minute. Luckily, the tunnels
green
are ready.
horde
All we have
upon
to
ye.
do is knock out a few walls, and within minutes, hundreds of liters of lava will flood these passages. Also, I've had our stone workers craft some reinforced doors to slow down the attackers while they burn to death.
Stalling
if we're lucky,
mechanics.
this just might
Ooh.
work. Suddenly, we receive a notification. A goblin has just been spotted. Jesus Christ, it's the
Yo,
whole
my
goddamn
kin.
herd. And they're heading straight for the tunnel entrance. I send a gnome to race them underground and open up the floodgates. The lava begins
Gotta
flowing,
have
and
bait.
several of my citizens are painfully immolated by accident.
I knew it, I knew
However,
it, I knew
other
it.
people's suffering
You
is a
fucking
small
idiot,
price
I knew
to
it.
preserve my greed. Shortly after, the goblins rush into the tunnel and begin beating down the doors. They're now standing in the lava, which is killing dozens of them and horribly mangling the rest. By the time they get through
Good,
the third
good.
door, the lucky ones are dead, while the rest are completely blind, immobile, and stuck thrashing about in superheated magma. When a goblin Goblin raid suffers enough casualties, they may attempt to retreat, which sounds good. However, we can't let that happen, because there's a chance they come back with a Goblin engineer and dig their own tunnel straight into our base.
What? You can't do that? You can't just subvert the entire defense? Like, you can't do that, dude. That's fucked up. You can't do that, man. That's fucked up, man. You can't do that, man. Come on, man. Fuck, man. Shit, man. Fuck.
So it's now time for the finishing touch.
Oh!
While the goblins are desperately throwing their body against the stone doors, I have a miner sneak behind them and remove the stairs that they use to get down here. I can only imagine the look of horror on their face when they attempt to retreat from the lava tunnel massacre, only to look up at where the stairs used to be and realize they can't leave. Actually, that's not entirely true. They technically can leave. They just have to fight their way through hundreds of liters of lava, a pile of dead bodies, and several reinforced stone doors, which is easier said than done when most of your limbs have been burned off and the intense heat has melted your eyeballs. Regardless, some of them tried, and they got pretty far,
bros,
but
you're
even
dead.
the ogres couldn't get through the final doors. A few of the other goblins refused this fate and instead camped out in the unflooded sections of the tunnel. That's fine too. There's nothing I love more than getting the notification a goblin has died of thirst. Really makes my day. Either way, by the end of the night, our visitors were dead and our population remained mostly alive. I'm sure we'll be hearing from the Goblin Rights Committee, but this is a huge step forward for all of gnome kind. Now that was great, but successfully timing all of it is a nightmare with a high probability of failure. And even in the best case scenario, it usually involves at least a dozen gnomes being incinerated.
That's why you have mechanisms,
but
dude.
the lava tunnels seem to be a very popular spot to take naps. This is natural selection on the highest level. So for the time being, we may be safe from the goblins,
gotta break some eggs to make an omelet.
We'll be dealing with a far more insidious enemy. Starvation. Winter is about 20 days away, and during winter, none of our crops will grow, meaning that if we don't have a huge stockpile of food by then, our population of 60 gnomes will quickly become a population of 60 emaciated corpses. So I get to work doubling our farming infrastructure and producing an industrial quantity of fruit salad. The next goblin raid should be for another 6 to 8 days. In this moment, I genuinely believed we were safe, until I was reminded just how far down the food chain we are. Because when one of our lumberjacks was attacked by a honey badger, I drafted 20 people into a militia and sent them to beat it to death with their bare hands. Little did I know, I was dealing with the strongest honey badger to ever live. 20 of our gnomes jumped him, and the combat log was an endless flood of punches and kicks. Actually, it's probably just easier to let you hear it. That's the sound of 20 people punching, kicking, headbutting, and biting the badger every second on 4 times speed. We have broken all of his legs, permanently blinded him, crushed his upper body, lower body, head, and neck, and collapsed both of his lungs. And yet, he refuses to die. In fact, I left them to fight and checked back 4 hours later, only to find that stupid little bastard still alive and staring back at me, as if to say,
give them some weapons.
It took 20 people an entire day and night, and several of them collapsed from exhaustion. But eventually we did kill the honey badger. However, at what cost? It is theorized that the scientific development of Western Europe was delayed hundreds of years as a result of the Dark Ages. Similarly, I cannot help but wonder what harmonious utopia we might be living in currently if 50% of my population didn't have to spend 24 hours pummeling a weasel to death.
Give them some weapons.
Behind us, I spent the next week setting up a grove to give us a renewable source of timber, and I prepared another lava tunnel for the next wave. This one hit us at the end of summer, and dare I say, it went pretty good. However, the goblins seemingly changed their tactics this time. They sent 80% of their army into the tunnel to kill us, but they also left about a dozen unarmed goblins on the top side to keep watch. The result of this is that after we dissolve the main goblin force underground, we then have to run out onto the front lawn and engage the remaining goblins in a 35-man fistfight.
Reggie?
Luckily, we have access to military perks, which effectively turn our unarmed gnomes into meth-addled lunatics. So the goblins were literally ripped apart and sold for drug money. We're now entering fall, and our stockpile of food is growing steadily, which is good, because I've recently found out goblin meat is purple and probably not suitable for consumption. With the tunnels done and our farms maxed out, I decided to start a construction project. You see, it's only a matter of time until the lava tunnels fail us.
A tower?
But if we research some better technology, I think I can craft a foolproof alternative. So I began designing a research tower to house all of our scientists for 24/7 research. If you're lucky enough to be drafted into the science team, congratulations. You no longer have to sleep in the communal dormitory, bathroom, living room, shower hybrid. Now you've got your own bed, and even freshly delivered food to maximize your research effectiveness. It took a while to build, but by the end of the month, research was well underway. By studying at these tables, our engineers collectively moved this progress bar closer to unlocking a new invention. Traditionally, people only have 1 or maybe 2 engineers, but I'm styling this more like a Bitcoin farm, with at least a dozen researchers all operating in tandem to find the research solution.
That's like 3 levels high.
I found that a team of 50 scientists can unlock the entire tech tree in 18 days. However, we can't afford to spare that many workers, so we're settling for a dozen. The sooner we get this research done, the better our chances of survival, and also less gnomes will have to die in industrial mining accidents. So to motivate the science team, I decided to build the roof of the research tower out of straw, and then I designated it as a stockpile for dead bodies. In this way, the collective weight of hundreds of dead gnomes can slowly cave in the roof above our researchers as blood seeps through the cracks to symbolize not only their impending demise, but also the societal cost of their scientific inadequacy. I would imagine that morale is a complicated topic in the research tower. Winter is now upon us, meaning that apart from butchering some yaks, we won't have any more food coming in for the next 12
Reggie, come on!
This seemed like a good time to strike up some international trade, so I opened up the diplomacy menu and found a nearby kingdom specializing in agriculture. First, we have to host a diplomat from this nation. Then, as long as he's impressed, he'll stay. And as long as he stays, we can trade. A few days later, he shows up, a gnomish ambassador from the kingdom Super Drip. Unfortunately, we haven't finished building his bedroom yet. So far, it's a completely unlit dirt pit with a pile of grass for a bed. That is, until a yak wanders downstairs and—
Hey, for a goblin, that's high society, dude. That's living on the high end.
And starts eating it. So every night the diplomat goes to sleep, he has to spend hours wandering around the darkness trying to find a bed that might not even exist, while dealing with the psychological torment that he could be gored by a wild yak at any moment. Unsurprisingly, he didn't stay long, but he did stay long enough for us to do some trading. Upon speaking with the foreign merchant, I realized we own almost nothing of value, and our most numerous commodity is dirt clumps. Luckily, we managed to scrounge together enough actually valuable items to trade for a male and female camel. With this, we'll be able to start a camel farm for extra meat and milk. However, as soon as I completed the trade, one of my butchers stole a camel, ran to the kitchen, and butchered it before I even realized what was happening. That camel cost 1,000 gold and several sexual favors, and now it's going—
What, does this game have auto butchering of just animals? Like, come on. In Dwarf Fortress, you have to like you yourself have to designate an animal to be butchered. Does this game just do it automatically? That's stupid. But then again, it has been dead for like 10 years.
To be a fucking sandwich. Sometimes I think these people don't deserve to survive, but I push on.
I don't think
on the topic
gnomes
of
are
survival,
people.
winter is actually going quite well. Going into this, I was prepared to lock half the population in a cave and let them starve to death if need be. But we're about halfway through the season, and we still have 75% of our food left. So we'll save the cannibalism for another day. The rest of the month proceeded relatively smoothly. Our researchers came up with their first inventions, such as a hand crank, spike traps, and levers, which are all useful tools, but we need to go even further. Other than that, I spent the season refining our lava tunnel design to reduce the gnome fatality rate.
Dude.
Unfortunately, some goblins did manage to sneak into the base and kick the shit out of one of our camels. Now,
did the
if there's
camel
one
win?
thing you don't do in Gnomoria, it's fuck with another man's livestock. Up to this point, I've been treating these little skirmishes as friendly fist fights between rival soccer teams, but now they've gone too far. As we speak, I'm building a weaponsmith, and next time we're going into this fist fight with a goddamn battle axe. We made it through the winter with
on,
about
Reggie, you
20%
should have
of our
had
food
weapons from the
remaining,
start.
and we spent all spring and summer researching like our lives depended on it. The only
Shaking my
notable
head.
occurrence during this time was when this one guy got pushed into the river by some goblins.
Did he
Gnomes
drown?
have the approximate density of a tungsten cube, so he didn't survive. However, a much greater and less hilarious tragedy was already looming on the horizon. That is, the Great Slowdown of Fall Day 1. I was playing the game normally, commanding my gnomes around
is
in
it
a
the
form of
snow causing
pseudo-slavery
lag?
while gawking at police body cam videos, when suddenly the frame rate began grinding
It has to be the snow.
That's weird, I thought to myself. Let's see if it passes. Nope, it only got worse.
No?
Eventually, it took 15 seconds for a single in-game minute to pass, and I had to click every button 100 times for it to register. I tried reloading previous save files.
What's causing it?
For whatever reason, every time on day 1 of fall, the game starts dying. At this point, I'm getting desperate, and in my fear and confusion, I turn to religion. My working theory is that the dark power of the One Ring is trying to sabotage us from completing this challenge. So I began making sacrifices to the satanic gods of Gnomoria in an attempt to appease them and get past Fall Day 1. I ritually sacrificed all of our yaks and destroyed our entire stockpile of food. To my surprise,
did that work?
This actually worked. But it only got us to Fall Day 2 before it started slowing down again. The fact that killing the yaks helped implies that the game was slowing down due to the number of AI. So I decided to take a shot in the dark. I went underground and picked a random cave. Then I spawned in a bunch of lava, and what happened next left me horrified. Within 10 seconds, 2,000 beetles had been killed by the lava. There were so many casualties that even trying to open the kill feed would crash my game. Ladies and gentlemen, forgetting to turn beetles off is the quintessential Gnomoria mistake, and I am ashamed.
So, the critters were the issue? Did the game not have a cap on how many critters could spawn? Wow. This is just baffling, dude. Like, this is like a Dwarf Fortress when you forget to sterilize your cats and you end up with like a gorillion cats and you get like 10 FPS. But like, this is even worse, dude. Like, come on, man. I think it's good that this game is dead.
Among the 17 people in the entire Gnomoria community, beetles are universally hated. And I'll tell you why. They can spawn in any unlit cave system, which is a huge problem because basically the entire map is an unlit cave system.
So the entire map fills up with NPCs?
A beetle can lay an egg sac, which then spawns more beetles, resulting in more egg sacs.
Yeah,
if you watched my
cascade.
Fallout 4 video on rad roaches, you'll know just how quickly this kind of replication can get out of hand. I don't like using dev tools in these challenges, but it's either that or the entire game hard locks due to 3,000 beetles spawning every day. So you better believe I lava'd the shit out of that cave system and used a save file editor to disable any more beetles from spawning.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
With the population bomb now diffused, we can move on to the most important part of the video, because the science team has officially invented pressure plates, hatches, and windmills. With these 3 items, we can create a master contraption capable of defending our base against thousands of goblins.
What are those
let's
hatches?
get to it. The first job is to generate electricity. In a perfect world, we could devise some kind of machine to convert human suffering.
Wait. Let's read this one. Let's begin. Linux users ascending hill to explain how Linux can do it. Solar powered loudspeaker. Linux can't do that. A trapdoor, so they fall in. Gently inclined slope. Okay, but what's the slope for? Turbine. Okay, so they fall, they spin the turbine. Cushioned exit deposits Linux uses. Okay, the Linux users get to live. How nice. Kill them.
To convert human suffering into an indefinite source of energy. But unfortunately, we're stuck using renewable energy, such as windmills. Creating a wind farm was the easiest part of this process, and it involved the fewest casualties. But the same can't be said for the next part. Step 2 is digging a giant 100-foot deep pit in the ground. The purpose of this will become clear shortly, but just know that this took forever, and we averaged about 2 industrial mining deaths per day. Part of the problem was golems. When moving around around bulk quantities of dirt and stone, it can sometimes animate into an angry golem who proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of you. Luckily, dirt golems are fairly low on the golem hierarchy, so my miners like to spend their lunch break gouging them to death with pickaxes. With the giant pit now reaching completion, we can install the final piece of the puzzle, the hatches. Above the pit, we create a winding labyrinth. This is the only entrance to our base. We replace the floor with mechanical hatches, and by supplying them with power from the wind farm, they can function as walkable terrain. However, if someone steps on this pressure plate, all of the hatches open up, dropping whoever is on them 100 feet to their death. This setup should be able to kill all of the goblins instantly, as long as we hit the pressure plate at the right time. So
at the right time, and as we've established, Reggie doesn't have great timing. And I bet this is gonna be super error prone, because what if there's any gnomes on those hatches, huh? Well, they're gonna die. But like, I use the same concept in Dwarf Fortress when I make a trap entrance. So you do like the same thing, you make a whole like snaking hallway, but then you also dig out like this is the walkable surface, but the thing is you put traps on them, and then you dig out the sides next to it all the way down. So imagine if these are empty, and these are walkable tiles with traps. In Dwarf Fortress, enemies can dodge, right? So if they dodge the trap and they're not killed, they're gonna dodge to the sides and fall like 7 blocks and then fall on a spike. So they either get chopped to bits by the traps, or they dodge, fall, and get impaled on a spike, falling 7 Z levels. It's simple, it's beautiful, it's elegant, but this isn't. This is just needlessly complicated, not good, poopy.
Question becomes, who can be trusted with the ultimate responsibility of activating this pressure plate? And the answer is this camel. Gnomes need to eat, sleep, and sometimes they accidentally drown themselves. But camels, they're just chilling 24/7. So I set up a single tile camel pasture right next to the pressure plate. When goblins come through the hallway, they'll scare the camel, he'll run onto the pressure plate, and voila, we've now got a smattering of goblin corpses at the bottom of a mine shaft. That, ladies and gentlemen, is my plan to get us through
why
the
is
next
the camel
3
down
years.
there?
However, many ideas are great in theory, but it's not until you test them that you can actually be sure, which leads us to Winter Day 3, the next goblin attack. 50 of them start funneling through the hallway. 3 or 4 gnomes rush out to meet them in an apparent suicide attempt. After obliging, the goblins continue into the final section, scare the camel, and get a free lesson in skydiving. That was pretty good. This might seem perfect, but trust me, it took a lot of testing, and I'd be lying if I said we didn't have half a dozen exploded camels at the bottom of this mine shaft. Additionally, I get extremely anxious seeing my gnomes entering and exiting the base.
Set a burrow or something, dude, come on!
Arriving at their destination and getting executed is the judgment of a fucking camel. However, that doesn't seem to bother the gnomes, because they regularly choose to fall asleep on the hatches for hours at a time. There are 2 ways to look at this. Either there's lead in our drinking water and my population has severe brain damage, or they worship the camel as some kind of protector deity, and they fall asleep on the hatches to prove their devotion to him. I choose to believe in the latter, because it makes me less frustrated when the camel wanders off to find food and 7 lumberjacks fall to their death. Another issue with this design is it requires more electricity than our wind farm can produce, so we had to use a coal generator. Thing works great, until we run out of coal, and well, you get the idea. This leads me to my next point, coal and monsters. We can produce some coal ourselves at these furnaces, but for the amount we need, we've got to do a lot of mining. And whenever you mine, there's a chance of zombies spawning. With the goblin threat neutralized, a zombie outbreak is now the greatest risk to our colony. So we expand the military. 2 squads, one with warhammers and one with halberds. These take forever to craft, but they're already coming in handy. At this point, it's all coming together. We just need to avoid starvation, hatch failure, and zombie apocalypse for another 3 years, and the challenge will be complete. So I put this shit on quadruple
You're not gonna
speed
make it,
and
little
start
bro.
passing the days.
You're not gonna make
More
it.
goblin waves hit the base, and we refine our technique. We've now got about a 95% success rate on the hatches, and whatever goblins survive survives is usually mobbed by gnomes until someone bites the lungs out of their chest. If pinning down a naked goblin and eating the organs straight out of his ribcage isn't utopia, then I don't know what is. Speaking of, as president of this wonderful colony, I'd like to introduce my platform for year 3, Goblins, as a form of recycling. After a
no, don't recycle my kind. We're not recyclable. I swear, we're not good for the environment. Please don't recycle us. Oh wait, are you supposed to recycle things that are not good for the environment? Okay, I guess you can recycle us, but please be gentle. We bruise easily.
Few months, we had accumulated hundreds of mushed up goblins in the pit, but by employing several butchers, we can process them into a reliable source of nutrients. I've also found that ogre leather can be turned into a variety of clothing and even furniture. Some people call Ed Gein a sicko. I call him an environmental visionary. The last step is to take their armor and melt it down into materials to craft weapons for our military.
Dwarf Fortress players know this as a goblinite.
And just like that, the Goblin menace has been reduced, reused, and recycled for the betterment of society. From here, the only thing we're missing is more real estate, so I began the Great Terraforming project. We're going to flatten out this entire mountain range and turn it into farmland and maybe an amusement park. This project took a very long time and involved us killing several thousand dirt golems. By the end, we were so proficient at their slaughter that we'd show up, immediately cut off all of the golem's limbs, and then stomp it to death as it writhed on the ground in agony. The golem population might not agree, but this is what I would call our golden age. An era of decadence.
How does it all fall to ruin, Reggie?
The goblins were crushed under the weight of their own aggression.
How does it all end?
The military was stronger than ever, and our harvests were bountiful. In fact, a little too bountiful. By accumulating over 2,000 food, we actually attracted the attention of a nearby Mant colony, which sent some worker drones to raid us for supplies. Our Camel was on smoke break at the time, so they actually managed to infiltrate the base and steal a few meals. However, the Mant brain is morphologically the same as the top 1% of gambling addicts, because they just don't know when to stop. They grab some food, carry it off the map, come back for more food, and repeat. Except this time, when they came back, we were waiting, and we used warhammers to pulverize every limb on their disgusting
you filthy ants.
Bodies. Hope the 6 yak sausages were worth it, you absolute freaks. Our swift response to the Mant invasion had me feeling confident, and several of our construction projects were making serious progress.
How much do you want to bet that what kills him is gonna be a giant Mant invasion force that he is not prepared for?
I thought to myself, nothing can go wrong now. And then, it did. One of our main jobs was the excavation of a giant underground arena, and me, a careless piece of shit, didn't follow the torch safety protocol, which resulted in a zombie spawning and attacking my miners. Don't tell the Union, but this happens pretty often. As a matter of fact, it's simply cheaper to get a new gnome than it is to craft a new torch. The typical response in this situation is to send 2 to 3 guards down, kill the zombies, and get back to work. However, this one was special. Before we could respond, the zombie chased down a miner, cornered, infected, and consumed him. Maz was the first soldier on the scene, but he forgot to put pants on before coming down. And as soon as he joined the fight, he was bitten on the leg and started bleeding out. 3 more guards showed up, presumably with pants, to engage the target. And despite slicing off his arm and leg, the zombie was still feral enough to rupture major arteries on all 3 soldiers, thereby forcing a retreat. We now have 4 guards bleeding to death and a total of 5 bandages on the other side of town. Additionally, now that they're infected, if they die at any point, they'll come back not only as zombies, but as zombies wearing late-game armor. Terrific.
What do you mean late game?
From the arena.
You had like 4 armored gnomes, 1 half armored, granted. But you can't even take down a shitty zombie? Like, come on, man, what are you doing? Or is the game just garbage? It might be both. Might be both.
several miners are still trapped and slowly being killed and reanimated as undead. By the time our second kill team comes through, there are already 3 new zombies. And while a lead warhammer to the brain is a foolproof solution to most problems, they're actually reanimating zombies faster than we can kill them, which is causing us some serious attrition. Shortly before shooting Woody Harrelson in the face with a pneumatic cattle gun, Anton Chigurh says, "You should admit your position, there would be more dignity in it." Which leads me to my point. Everyone in this pit is going to die. All we can do now is hope to contain it. So, as our last soldier fought valiantly to hold off the zombies, I began enacting the quarantine protocol by sealing off all of the tunnels connected to this area.
Yeah, that's usually how this
but
goes.
only by sacrificing the entirety of our military, mining, and construction forces. And even then, it almost wasn't enough, because one zombie did breach containment and make it to the surface. It took all 30 of our remaining colonists to beat him to death before encasing the dead bodies in dirt tombs to contain their reanimation. Okay, let's assess our situation. Almost everyone is dead, and there's roughly a dozen highly armored zombies waiting to kill the rest of us. About the only thing we have going for us is that the undead are now trapped underground fighting an indefinitely respawning population of golems. But the golems suck, and our bones will have long since turned to ash before they manage to kill even a single zombie. On top of all of that, we're currently experiencing a famine, and starvation is a likely outcome. It would be fair to call this a survival situation. And what do you do in a survival situation? You drink your piss and get back to work. So I began foraging the countryside for food while crafting some new weapons and armor. This allowed us to survive until the next season, at which point we received a new batch of gnomes. Right off the bat, 50% of them drafted into the zombie eradication corps. Training begins immediately. The weak do not survive. They've got new weapons, new armor, and most importantly, armored pants. I gave them a month to train, and now it's time to go. Their first test was the outdoor zombie I managed to trap in this dirt capsule.
How much do you want to bet that his army of seasoned veterans is gonna fail horribly? They're gonna die.
After cracking it open, the kill team ran inside, and within 3 seconds, they had disemboweled the zombie, broke his leg, and sliced off his head. This is promising. Our crusade continues into the evening, launching an operation to retake the wind farm, and then creating a forward operating base in the tunnels beneath it. I ordered 24/7 patrols here and supply it with some bandages. If we fail now, containment will be impossible. From here, we begin clearing the tunnels one by one, encountering several reanimated soldiers along the way, but by consistently caving in their skulls, we're making good progress.
Very smart.
Pressing forward, we managed to lead the zombies out of the mining area and into the hallways, where we jumped them 10-on-1. After a few minutes of fighting, it looks like we've got them all, so I set up guard posts next to any recently deceased bodies and immediately bludgeon them to death as they reanimate. Just like that, the zombie uprising appears to have been quelled.
Good job, Reggie. You did it.
Viewer. You can spend 5 minutes setting up torches, or you can spend 3 in-game months trying to avoid cannibalization. The choice is yours. The zombie outbreak was fully contained by fall of year 4, and after another hour, we officially made it to year 5, the technical endpoint of our challenge. It is at this time that a well-medicated person would close Gnomoria, stand up from their desk, and go outside, satisfied that they had completed the challenge. But that person is not me. I have a vision for our colony, dreams of chronic and sustained cruelty, and I won't stop until those dreams become reality. So I kept playing. In fact, I kind of lost track of time, and before I knew it, it was year 10. After 5 years, a lot has changed, so allow me to take you on a brief tour. Previously, all of our shit was arranged randomly as some kind of perverted homage to entropy. But now we've got signs of intelligent design. First of all, neatly separated fields for farming, a brand new 2-story kitchen, a luxury hotel for housing diplomats, a market square for international trade, a public park to facilitate gay sex, several new ranches for emus, alpacas, goats, and yaks, a cemetery with 600 dead gnomes stuffed into like 30 graves, and finally, a budget motel for all of our farmers. Just don't mind the dead migrant worker on the 2nd floor, or the one on the roof.
That's usually
common.
Him
off for a while now, but I think he's long since fused into the grass. You may be thinking, damn, Reggie, you really spent 5 years building all of this? To which I reply, no. This took about 6 months. The other 4.5 years was spent designing the Goblin torture chamber. Please,
don't torture me.
I'll explain there. For the first 5 years of this colony, we were tormented relentlessly by the goblins. And lately, I realized that the instant death of hitting the ground at 90 miles an hour was simply too merciful. So I built something special just for the goblins. Let's work through a hypothetical
what did we do? We just wanted to kill you.
Situation. You're a sadistic inbred goblin that attacks my colony.
Hey, I love my mother very much, and my sister, and my other sister, and my other sister, and my cousins, and my other cousins, and my distant cousins, and my grandmother.
After you finish smearing shit all over yourself because you're a disgusting creature, you make your way to my front gates, at which point you get filtered by the Camel.
Fuck you.
However, unlike your predecessors, you do not drop 100 feet to your death. In fact, you drop 10 feet into some kind of collection chamber. You're stuck, but not for long, because I have carefully and painstakingly designed 6 different paths for you to take, which could lead you into my colony if you survive. And
Bro. He made a torture escape room for goblins? Reggie, what the fuck, dude? We don't deserve this. That's messed up. That's fucked up, Reggie. That's fucked up, man. Can't believe you would do this to us. I want to see more, though.
Depending on which lever I pull in this control room, one of those paths will open. Let's look at the first option. Pulling this lever opens up a path into a fairly unassuming room. In fact, the exit is right there. The goblins rush in and bolt for the door. However, the first one to reach it steps on a pressure plate, which raises 3 different mechanical walls. The first one closes the door behind him, locking all of his friends inside, and the other 2 walls raise on either side of him, trapping him on the pressure plate. Then comes the fun part, the firing squad. Across the water, I bring in 4 or 5 musketeers and I spend all afternoon blasting the goblins with lead musket balls at close range. This method of execution takes a while, but it's a great way to level up our marksmanship. After it's all done, we go in, collect our recycling material, and it's ready for another group. But maybe you don't get that room. Maybe instead, we open up this path. It leads the goblins into a series of trap doors, which then deposit them in an underground pit. This doesn't seem so bad, until I have my engineers activate a series of electric pumps, which begin pumping molten magma from the Earth's core up a series of carefully excavated tunnels and directly into the goblins' room, cooking them and all of their ogre friends to perfection. In terms of low maintenance and high suffering, you simply can't beat the Goblin Cooker 9000. Now, on the next option. I titled this one Death from Above, and you'll soon understand why. It begins as a long hallway outfitted with a series of pressure plates,
could this be
60 feet above which we can observe a string of anvils resting on mechanical hatches. So our goblin friends come through the hallway and hit the pressure plates, causing 900 pounds of lead anvils to instantly crush every bone in their body. I also tried experimenting with other objects such as concrete pillars and brick slabs, but there's just something iconic about the anvil. Now, unfortunately, we do have a limited supply of anvils, so if you survive that first part, you will proceed into the next room where you realize we still have more than enough to kill you. The most agile goblins may be able to avoid this Looney Tunes style execution, at which point they proceed upstairs to even more pressure plates. These ones don't drop anvils, they drop you. And as a goblin plummets 70 feet to the ground, they have 2 possible outcomes. They either hit our limestone floor at 45 miles per hour, or if they're feeling particularly funny, they'll land on top of another goblin, killing both of them on the spot. Now, in the unlikely event that a goblin manages to manifest some kind of divine miracle and survive all of that, their reward will be a mixture of 20 spike and blade traps to sever all of their major arteries before getting hermetically sealed underground by a mechanical wall. The cleanup on this room is a nightmare, but it's definitely my favorite. Moving on.
What did we do to deserve
simple
this?
And psychologically devastating. So I took inspiration from Chinese water torture. Here's how it works. The goblins get caught in our collection chamber, head through the 4th door, down the hall, into another room, before finally falling into a very basic pit. There is exactly 1 torch and no escape. In each corner of the room, I have assembled the 4 fundamental elements of Gnomoria: earth, wood, metal, and wheat. In fact, we have about 1,000 of each, meaning that several times a day, these piles will animate into golems and attack the goblins. The goblins will, of course, kill the golems, but that just drops all of the materials back on the floor for the golem to respawn in 5 or 10 minutes. The torture isn't necessarily getting beat up by golems. It's not knowing when they'll strike next. Sure, they may be dead now, but the second you close your eyes to rest, the very dirt itself may manifest into some kind of vengeful construct and flatten your windpipe like a piece of paper. And no matter how many times you strike him down, the golem will always come back. These goblins will never sleep, never eat, and never drink for the rest of their lives. Slowly, they will fall to the golems one by one until they have all been assimilated into the category of the inanimate. The 5th torture room is also relatively straightforward. Here's how it works. It kills you. In more detail, it is a simple rectangular room with a basic locking mechanism. Once trapped inside, the goblins will begin idling, which moves them around randomly. Normally, a very innocuous thing to do. However, in this case, it will spell their demise, because I have placed several pressure plates all over the room, and each one activates between 1 and 5 mechanical walls. If a goblin happens to be standing on a mechanical wall when activated, it will raise itself up and push the goblin upward.
This is the most benign one so far.
An entire fucking mountain, meaning that the mechanical wall smears them into paste on the ceiling. It is so instantaneous, so complete, that there's not even a record of it happening in the combat log. No description, no recorded death, just immediate annihilation. Honestly, I'm not sure what's worse. Having every bone in your body shattered because your friend sat down on a pressure plate, or being the final surviving goblin who has to slowly starve to death as his friend's remains drip from the ceiling.
Fuck, dude.
Anyway, onto the last room. Our final and most elaborate...
Please, Reggie. I can't take more of this. You've brutalized my kind too much. I can't bear any more. Please. End our suffering.
Room was born out of necessity. You see, in the first 5 years, we accumulated hundreds of dead goblins, and even though we were eating them, we couldn't eat the bones, so I had to find a different use for them. As our goblins proceed through the 6th door, they will descend a flight of stairs before arriving in a white hallway. On their left and right, they will observe a dozen anatomically reconstructed goblin skeletons.
Is this a goblin mausoleum? Necropolis? 1 gorillion dead goblins were used to make this necropolis. Absolutely horrifying.
And with each step forward, they will hear the unsettling crunch of walking across a floor made out of goblin bones. At the end of the hall, their destiny comes into view. A full-scale gladiatorial arena outfitted with the hundreds of skulls of their predecessors, watching them ominously as they descend into the fighting pit. Once inside, the goblins are locked in the arena, at which point their presence will lure dozens of undead from the underground spawning cave. And so begins the show. Typically, the goblins are up against skeletons and zombies, but if you're willing to crash your game, you can also make them fight an infinite supply of beetles instead. And while this room may not be the most creative, it does have a certain theatrical vibe that appeals to my delusions of grandeur. All in all, pretty fun. This does raise the question though, now that the arena is done, what are we going to do with all of these dead goblins? And the answer is quite simple. Return to sender. In the diplomacy screen, we can actually send things to the Goblin Kingdom. If they like what we send, they'll leave us alone. If they don't like it, they'll attack us with as many as 10,000 goblins. Now, in certain circumstances, returning the dead bodies of fallen soldiers could be seen as a gesture of goodwill. However, when you return those bodies in the form of 250 Vienna sausages, you are typically not afforded such a charitable interpretation. I don't like pissing the goblins off by turning their loved ones into sausages or baking them into pies. I love it, because there's nothing better than watching them send an army of 300 angry goblins, only for them to rush into the crusher room and massacre themselves within 20 seconds. As you bear witness to this carefully conducted symphony of suffering, you may feel compelled to ask, Reggie, what was the hardest part about killing all of those people? And I'll tell you, the hardest part was stopping the game from crashing. You see, dear viewer, when you play Gnomoria, every single day after year 5 is a game of Russian roulette, and the developer RoboBob is the one holding the shotgun, because he made the brave and stunning decision to code Gnomoria such that it can only run on a single core of your CPU at a time. This means that despite 12 Congolese children dying in a cobalt mine for you to have the most powerful processor on the market, Gnomoria will laugh in your face as it uses only one of your 32 cores and then crashes your computer. RoboBob actually future-proofed his game backwards. Absolute cinema. Understandably, playing a game at 4 FPS is not conducive to the continuity of my lifespan, so I set out to solve the problem. As it turns out, the most CPU-intensive part of the game is when gnomes are idle. Even 10 idle gnomes will tank your performance. This necessitates you finding creative and at times dystopian ways to waste as much of your gnome's time as possible.
Dude, what were those Victorian? There were like places where if you were poor, you could do work for some money, but it was the most mind-numbing shit imaginable. I think they were called workhouses. I think that's what it was called. He basically invented workhouses in Gnomoria. He made workhouses. Actually horrifying.
And let me tell you, I got pretty good at it. For example, I came up with the concept of a grass census. I had my gnomes spend all year collecting every blade of grass on the entire map, counting them in a giant stockpile, and then immediately putting them back where we found them, thereby keeping us appraised on the exact population of grass for no reason. My next idea was to build a power station where my gnomes could spend 18 hours a day turning a hand crank to generate a nominal amount of electricity that we don't even need. In fact, the power station isn't even connected to the power grid, but that stays between you and me. Eventually, I came across the ultimate time-destroying activity, picking things up and putting them back down in the same spot, also known as the gym. Here we can lift weights, pump iron, and sculpt ourselves into the most ideal physical specimen. And since our colony is basically running on autopilot at this point, 90% of our population spends 100% of their time in this gym. And I'm pleased to report the game is now running not too bad.
Beautiful.
Strictly speaking, I didn't have to put this in the video, but I find it incredibly amusing that the solution to 15 years of terrible optimization was simply going to the gym and getting sick pissingly shredded. So where does that leave us now? Well, we've protected the ring for 5 years, constructed a Saw-style series of torture chambers, got absolutely ripped, and I've even created a fully robotic police force to patrol the streets and beat up homeless people.
That's
in conclusion,
awesome.
I don't think it's physically possible to beat this challenge any harder. So, Gnomoria, excellent game. I will never be playing it ever again. Thanks for watching.
Wow. I'll be honest, I was kind of underwhelmed in like the first half of the video. But my god, that second half was absolutely chef's kiss. Beautiful. Disgusting. Horrifying treatment of my kind. We goblins do not deserve this kind of treatment. And Reggie will face the full might of the goblin legal system for his transgressions. Everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. Go check Reggie's video out if you haven't already. Subscribe to him, like his video, and comment on his video. He deserves it so much. And if you find it in your heart, I would kindly appreciate it if you would do the same for me. Thank you so much. Please tell me what you liked about the video, and I will see you guys another time. Bye-bye.